episode 97 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 28th of August 2020. I'm Joe, and with me are Phelim.
Hello.
Graham.
Hello.
And Will.
Hello.
And again, we're recording slightly ahead of time, so if anything big happens in the next few days, we won't talk about it. You'll know why we haven't talked about it. A little bit of personal news up front, and that is that I will be doing Linux Action News again soon. As you listen to this, it'll be this Sunday/Monday coming, so about a week from now. That is because Jupiter Broadcasting is independent again. It's no longer owned by a cloud guru. It's not a full-time job for me like it was before. It's just Linux Action News for now. So we'll have to see what happens, whether it grows beyond that. But at least that show is going to be back, and people have said they missed it, and I missed doing it. So that should be cool. And just to be 100% certain, this show and the new show and 2.5 admins, they are just staying exactly as they were before, independent shows that are not part of Jupiter Broadcasting. That's another thing people have asked me about. But yeah, otherwise, good news.
Hooray.
Yeah, it's great.
Good luck, Joe.
Yeah, thanks. Right, let's start with a bit of news then. This is pretty old news by now, but we missed an episode because we recorded it in advance so that you could go to France and have a lovely time, Graham.
Merci beaucoup.
I'm very envious. I saw your photo of the pool and everything, so yes. But anyway, that is that Mozilla have laid off 250 people, which is about a quarter of their staff. Doesn't look too good, does it?
What the fuck are Mozilla doing?
Right.
Cutting costs is what they're doing.
So my suggestion is we somehow managed to cut the leadership loose from Mozilla and us four take over it.
Well, I think I could find better way to spend 400 to 450 million per year. Like, what are they doing with it? They're just burning it all the time.
That's like 600 grand per employee.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money that they're spending, and the browser is not doing too well at all. But I think it does make sense. I think I am in favour of them slimming down a bit and becoming less bloated. Surely that's good.
I think we've been far too polite, and we have, because we've discussed it quite a lot over the last 12 months, 6 months. Fine, I totally agree. It's good to be slimmed down and agile and all that stuff, but they also need to have a razor-sharp focus on what's important, and it's the browser. And there's just no mention of the browser. I have very little confidence in what they're going to do with the future of the browser. Does this mean, for example, they're going to switch to Blink?
Well, from what I've been able to ascertain, they haven't laid off the Gecko people working on that. It's more of the stuff around the periphery that has gone. So I think, at least for now, the browser is safe. Who knows what the future plans for layoffs are going to look like, but it doesn't look like the browser is in any immediate danger to me.
But they did lay off the team that was working on the future rendering engine, not Gecko, the other one.
The one that's based on Rust?
Yeah, and all the Rust developers while they're at it.
Yeah, and the MDN people as well, which is bad for documentation.
Yeah, so everything that Google puts a Google dash in front of will be the de facto standard then, essentially, if they have their way.
But I also think they owe us a very clear definition of what they want to do, where they're taking the project.
Why do they owe us that, though?
Well, if they want our money to get us, if they want to get off the Google money, which is, a lot of cash every year, and I mean, they've signed up now till 2023, I think, so they've renewed it. But I mean, if they want us to invest in them, surely they have to give us a decent idea what they're going to do with the money. Because, like, if 75 to 95% is that it was previously provided by Google or Yahoo and it switched over for a few years, I mean, that's a lot of cash to replace.
It is. It's a ridiculous amount of money to replace, but I can't see Google pulling that money anytime soon for a couple of reasons, really. The first one is that it would not be a good look for Google to just pull that money and to basically kill Firefox and kill Mozilla. But also the antitrust stuff. They're under so much pressure already with Android and everything.
Yeah.
For them to be essentially developing the only web rendering engine would leave them at least at risk of antitrust stuff. So I can't see it being a problem going forward. Like, I've always thought that, yeah, they'll pull the money, but then I thought, why would they give them reportedly like 400 million a year or whatever, maybe 450? That's over $1 billion over the next 3 years. Why would they do that? And then from reading a bit about it, that's when it dawned on me that that must be why. And therefore, at least in the short to medium term, I can't see them pulling the money. So Mozilla will just keep doing what they're doing.
Google, the company with a history of killing a project, and you think it's one project too far. Okay.
Well, the thing is that you kill your own projects, and that's fine. But if you kill other projects, that's when you start to get in serious shit, potentially.
No, I agree with you, Joe. I think part of this is that Mozilla Firefox is a proxy for Google turning around and say, look, you know, we enable competitors to operate in the same space. But I mean, I was just looking at the Mozilla Manifesto, and the first paragraph, the first large paragraph is, we are committed to an internet that includes all peoples of the earth, where a person's demographic characteristics do not determine their online access. This is it's the browser. And when I say who are we, we're the users of that browser, or the users of the internet. It's their imperative, I think, to really focus on the browser. If not the browser, at least explain their motivation, explain their roadmap for what they're going to do with this hundreds of millions of dollars.
And they're a non-profit organisation, and I really struggle to understand where all of that money goes. It's an enormous amount of money. What are they doing with it?
Well, if you pay everybody ridiculous amounts of money, you can't have a profit. Problem solved.
Well, the thing is that you have to pay people ridiculous amounts of money because they have to compete with for-profit companies who will do that. If you go and work for Google or whatever, you get paid shitloads. So they can't just start paying peanuts to people because they wouldn't get anyone good, would they?
I don't know about that. I think there are still plenty of ideological software developers who would choose to work for Firefox or Mozilla rather than work for Google. In fact, I know there are, and they're good developers. I think that they would. If Mozilla would take a stand on, for example, privacy, then I think they would attract some really good talent, and they wouldn't have to pay them $600,000 a year each.
But they have tried to do that. Like, every time we talk about it, this comes up, and they have at least tried and made the right noises about the privacy stuff. And that's always front and center for them. Maybe they could be doing more, granted, but it is certainly on their agenda to do that. But the thing is, like, we kind of talk about this, the browser, as in the desktop browser, but that's becoming less and less relevant to most people. And what really matters is mobile. And even there, it's not going very well, is the bottom line. They don't have any market share at all, basically. And it doesn't help that they have pushed this new update, which is they've been working on for a long time. And just look at the Google Play Store reviews for it. They are bad. People do not like it.
Well, I say those people should have been using F-Droid because I didn't get it yet, so it's fine.
What version are you actually using from F-Droid?
Fennec. So, yeah, I think it's an LTS release or something, or ESR, whatever they call it. I think it's 68 maybe. But, it didn't ask to update yet, so I missed it.
Okay, yeah, because this is 79 that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the 68 was what all the mobile users were stuck on while they worked on this new thing. But it basically has broken loads of extensions, and there's only like a few blessed extensions that will work now. Stuff that's useful, like uBlock Origin or whatever, but people who had come to rely on a bunch of extensions are very pissed off about this.
Yeah, and that's important. I mean, I've heard from people using the Matrix add-on, it's really important add-ons that Firefox is there to support. And this happens time and time again. I use Firefox on Android, and I use the nightly beta. So these changes came about a while ago for me. But it's difficult to get your head around.
What's your experience been like, though, with it? Like, is it a good browser still?
No, I have to force myself to use it. There's more UI friction than if I use a competing browser. And I do it on some stupid principle.
I like stupid principles.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit that I've been using Chrome for a long time on Android because Firefox was just a bit shit compared to it. It's all right, and I'd often have it installed as my secondary browser, but then last time I wiped, I didn't even bother installing Firefox because I just didn't need it anymore, and it's not a good sign, is it?
No, I mean, the tab view's the main thing. Now it's become just this another list that you have to switch between manually. It's people who aren't used to browsers, I think will find that confusing, but there's all kinds of other things as well.
Yeah, all a bit grim then, really, in terms of Mozilla. But at least they've got the money, so with the right organization, maybe this will...
No, they've had the money for a long time, and I think that's why I'm relatively angry about it. This has been... They've had the Google money for over a decade, I don't know, 15 years?
Yeah, and the statement that Mitchell Baker put out when they announced they were making all of these redundancies, I read it a few times, and there are a lot of words in there, but they didn't ever commit to doing anything. It was all about how things are going to change, but no facts in there. And I would have thought that if you were going to lay a lot of people off, then you would have come up with a reason to do that other than cost saving.
All right, well, before we get too doom and gloomy, let's talk about something that's good news as far as I can see. And that is the Fairphone 3 Plus, which is a slightly upgraded version of last year's Fairphone 3 with better cameras and speakers. Now, you can either just buy the phone, or if you've got a Fairphone 3, you can change the camera module out and get a much better camera for your phone. This is just a revolutionary idea. I know it's been all about repairability and modularity and stuff before, but this really grabbed me when I read it. I just thought, this is what phones should be like.
Really?
Yes.
You're going to get to a point, in 3 years' time when you think, God, these photos of my children are just not quite the quality that I need. I'm going to swap out my phone and put something else, my camera, and put something else in.
Yeah. Like the camera on my 3T is a bit shit, like especially with pictures of stars and stuff like that. Just forget about it. If I had a better camera that would work with software to give me great photos, then I'd love to swap it out. And if I only had to pay, 50, 60, 70 quid for it, rather than buying a whole new phone, then I'd be seriously tempted to do it. I mean, I could maybe do that now, but I'd have to take the whole thing apart. But if it's designed to do that, then I think that's great.
Sounds like a pain in the arse to me.
I think the battery should be replaceable. That's good. But the camera?
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I like the way they're trying to replace as many components with recycled bits. I mean, that is quite good. And they're trying to source the precious metals and things like that from sort of more ethical regions too. So, I mean, I think in that sort of sense, I think it's better than maybe the modular part. I mean, I thought it was a bit daft that it was modular until you said that the camera was a bit crap and then you could swap it out. And it's sort of thinking about that might actually be quite smart in the long run, because like processor speed, memory on my phone, same as yours, 3T. I mean, I don't have a reason to change anything on it. In fairness, I don't take enough photos for it to be of any use for me to even change the camera. But, components like that where you maybe if the modem bit could swap out as well.
Yeah, upgrade to 5G or whatever.
5G, yeah, exactly. But, yeah, it's a hard sell, I think.
All right, Phelim, you put this in then about Flight Gear, your beloved flight sim.
Yeah, well, it was more a case of last year we picked up that this competition that was being run by DARPA, the Defense Research Evaluation, whatever it is in the States. We're using Flight Gear, and the JSB Sim, which is the engine that runs all the aerodynamics and stuff on it, was being used to create a artificial intelligence program that was going to compete against humans, and then later on, I think this year, they're going to compete against each other in various battles, fighting on red versus blue. And at the time, it was just interesting to see that Flight Gear was being used as the lower sort of fair level, open access interface to all this. And unfortunately, now we've managed to develop an AI that has beat the human 5-0 in a, fairly restricted combat approach, but still, yeah, I think we're all screwed essentially, especially with KDE Live now doing facial recognition. They can bolt all those things together and have an open source killing machine.
I, for one, welcome our AI overlords.
You're not going to be buying a Microsoft Flight Simulator then, Phelim?
I am not, even though my brother has it and it looks very good. I spit at him.
I've heard it's amazing, but I have no interest in it.
It looks terrible.
It does look amazing, but getting all that data on your hard drive is going to be a push, isn't it, Phelim?
Okay, this episode is sponsored by Entroware. Go to entroware.com, and they are a dedicated Linux computer seller based here in the UK, and they ship their computers with Ubuntu or Ubuntu Mate pre-installed. They have a huge range of laptops, from affordable ones which are ideal for email and browsing, all the way up to real powerhouses with dedicated graphics and even desktop-class CPUs in them. Almost everything's configurable with the amount of storage and RAM and what CPUs they have, and if you can't find something that's exactly right for you, then do get in contact with them and they'll do you a custom order. They also have a couple of servers and a range of desktops, including a small form factor machine and a really nice all-in-one. They ship to the UK, Republic of Ireland, France, Germany, Italy and Spain. And if you do buy one of their machines, then there's a little drop down at checkout. You can select Late Night Linux and they'll know that we sent you to them. So go to entroware.com for all your Linux computing needs. On to a bit of admin then. And first of all, thank you everyone for supporting us on PayPal and Patreon. It's really appreciated. And remember, if you support us for $5 or more on Patreon, you can get an advert-free RSS feed. So check that out. If you want to learn about that, latenightlinux.com/support. And if you want to get in contact, latenightlinux.com/contact. And do keep an eye on the Late Night Linux Extra feed, or the all episodes if you want this show and extra, because I recorded a couple of days ago another episode with Kyle where we address the feedback that everyone has been writing in. And he also had a quick look at Pop! OS as well. So do check that out. That should be good. I'll put a link to the RSS feed in the show notes, or just search your podcast player for Late Night Linux Extra. So one of the questions that we had in our Ask Us Anything Sensible on Patreon, I've been kind of hanging on to, and I think now's the time to discuss it. This comes from Neil. He asks, are Canonical standing on the shoulders of giants or building castles on the sand? And he kind of elaborated a little bit about how Debian is having some issues, shall we say, with Systemd and technical disagreements there, and also obviously the political disagreements with the project leader elections, where that was very much along sort of quite political lines, and also the GNOME thing, which Canonical have had issues getting stuff upstreamed with GNOME, and people have criticized it, let's say, technically as well, you know, single-threaded and crashing takes everything down and all the rest of that. So are these two great projects that Canonical should be basing their operating system on, or is it a bad idea?
I think it's exactly the role of a distro to pick the open source projects that make most sense to their goals. I think Canonical are right to pick GNOME. I think that it is a good project to base everything on. And yes, there have been some relationship issues, but as far as I can tell from the outside now, things are progressing and they're doing well. One of the difficult jobs that the distro has to do is make decisions on behalf of the user. And Canonical have always been very good at making decisions on behalf of the user. And a lot of users will disagree with those decisions, but that's fine. That's what you have to do when you make a decision. And I think they have almost entirely correctly made those decisions, chosen the right technologies, based their projects on the right underlying projects. And I think that they are standing on the shoulders of giants and waving a flag for what a distro should be.
I think also that the two aren't mutually exclusive. I think you can stand on the shoulders of giants and build castles in the sand.
The giants that you're standing on the shoulders of are standing on sand, maybe.
Could it be a nuclear weapon was tested on the sand and it's now very hard glass?
I think some aspects of a project could be stood on the shoulder of giants, whereas others may not be. This is interesting because obviously I work at Canonical and I don't speak for Canonical, but I've also gone through ups and downs with Ubuntu outside of Canonical and some of the things it's tried to do, and working, no one's going to believe me, I suppose, but working inside a company does give you a particular insight into how it operates. And it is quite different to how I imagined it to be outside of the company, where I think you often kind of depersonalize a company into like an evil corporation or something like that. And it really isn't like that. I mean, if only you could see the internal discussions that were had about replacing IRC recently, for example, the commitment that employees at the company had to finding an open source solution is incredible. And you don't see that in very many places. And Canonical is trying to do its best. I think I have faith that it has tried to. I don't want this to sound like a shill piece. But what I'm trying to say is things are complicated when you get inside them. And it may be, to some people, it looks like it's building castles in the sand. And maybe it has built some of its own castles in the sand. But it is usually trying to do the right thing from an open source perspective as well. And that is genuinely what I've found inside the company. And that's from someone who kind of was a bit cynical about Canonical and Ubuntu at certain points in the past. And it's certainly not ideal, and there's a lot that could be improved. But one more thing, I think also with open source and Linux, we have a tendency to kind of knock, maybe it's a British thing, to like knock things down that are kind of successful. And Ubuntu has been very successful in getting Linux out there to the masses.
I think the beautiful thing about it is the fact that Debian can be this chaotic or seemingly chaotic system of a meritocracy, but with very opinionated people doing it. And then you can still choose something different. Like, whereas, Debian is only kind of using systemd, but kind of and not. Canonical can sit on top of that and say, yeah, well, we're obviously going to use systemd fully. And, you can pick and choose things like that. It doesn't have to mean that the whole underlying foundation of it is broken. They can have almost separate bits to each other, and it's kind of nice the way that works.
Yeah, and if things don't work out with GNOME, then they could pivot to Mate or Plasma or whatever. If you look at how quickly your team, it was under your management, Will, the big change happened from Unity to GNOME. And that went very, very smoothly because it was a very good team working on that. And so I would imagine that, especially under Wimpress's stewardship, should they want to move to Mate, it would be possible to do that, or potentially something else. And that's if the problems with GNOME escalate and it becomes a big issue, which I don't think it will, because they seem to have a reasonably good relationship. So I'm not sure about that. And as for Debian, I think I do agree with you, Phelim, that they are kind of just ignoring the chaos and taking Debian. But I mean, the direction that Ubuntu's going in, and Linux generally, which is like systemd and snaps, essentially, does it really matter what the underlying distro is? It would be a lot of work. It'd be a monster undertaking to move to another base. And I don't know what that would be, whether that would be, it'd be unlikely to be Red Hat based, wouldn't it? So like maybe Arch or something like that. I don't know. But I have enough faith in the company to hire the right engineers to make it happen.
But we can't even think of them as separate projects in a certain respect, in the fact that Ubuntu feeds so many things back upstream as well. So it's almost a self-healing reciprocal sort of engine that fixes itself. That's a terrible analogy, but there you go.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of the Debian developers are also Ubuntu developers. So yeah, there is a symbiotic relationship there. But I don't think that it's even going to be an issue. I mean, just like the ridiculous idea of moving to an Arch base or SUSE or whatever it is, I don't think that will ever be needed, because the problems that Debian has may be quite serious, but I don't think they're terminal.
And regardless of what the outcome of those Debian decisions are, if you're an Ubuntu user, you'll be completely shielded from all of that turmoil. And unless you're interested in finding out what's going on, you will never even be aware of it. And I think that's fine. That's a perfectly good solution.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I don't think you need to get your hopes up, though. I don't think they're switching to XFCE anytime soon, Joe. Especially not from what Kyle said last week.
Dare to dream. Okay, this episode is sponsored by DigitalOcean. Go to do.co/LNL. and you can get $50 credit with 30 days to use it. DigitalOcean offers VMs, or droplets as they call them, with full root access in data centers all around the world with super fast networking and super fast SSDs. You can use a distro like Ubuntu, Fedora, Debian, CentOS, or FreeBSD, or you can even upload your own custom image. Or you can use their one-click apps like Basic Lamp and LampStacks, WordPress, Discourse, or GitLab. I've been using DigitalOcean for years now, and in that time, they've added tons of new features, things like managed databases and Kubernetes, object storage, and recently Virtual Private Cloud, which allows you to create multiple private networks for your account or team. The droplets start from as little as $5 a month, but you can scale them all the way up to 192 gigabytes of RAM with 32 CPU cores and 12 terabytes of storage. But you can add block storage or object storage as you need it. And if you need particularly high amounts of RAM or CPU, they have droplets optimized for that too. So go to do.co/LNL and get your $50 credit. That's do.co/LNL. All right, let's do a quick KDE Korner then before we get out of here. The first one is that KDE Neon has been rebased on Ubuntu 20.04.
Yes, it has, and I have not even dared touch my workstation because that is a Franken install from Kubuntu from 2013 that has progressed to KDE Neon and has encrypted home folders, which are no longer supported as of even the last release. So,
at what point do you just back up and wipe and start again?
It's possibly going to happen this weekend. I just did not have the time prior to this show, but I did it on my laptop. So my laptop is a clean install from the last release, and I did an upgrade of it. Completely flawless, and to be quite honest, I didn't even notice the difference. Like, it is that good because you already have the hardware extended support kernels and graphics drivers. You've already got like a latest Firefox, and then you've already got up-to-date KDE. So, to be quite honest, I really didn't notice. I mean, that sounds terrible. It means that like it was not worth them doing it. I'm sure it was obviously worth them doing it, but there was no crashes, no bugs, no anything like that. So it was a really good upgrade.
No, that's what you should have. You shouldn't notice. That's a good experience as far as I'm concerned. If you were happy with it before, then yeah, you should notice. And like you said, it's the same Plasma, the same KDE applications. That's the beauty of KDE Neon. So yeah, good stuff. Graham, did you update to it?
No, it's funny because I'm in exactly the same boat as Phelim.
Oh. Yeah.
I had a Kubuntu install from, if it's 2013, then that's when it was. And I switched over to the Neon repositories and haven't looked back, although it breaks.
Yeah, it's like I think it'll be a really quick upgrade, and now I'm thinking, I've installed quite a lot of stuff. Now, do I trawl back through all my apt-history.log files and I try and figure out what I actually installed myself, what came part of it? And it's like, oh man, I don't want to do that.
I usually close down X, everything, get right back down to the terminal, and then whenever it says there's a conflict, I go, yep, get rid of it all.
Wipe and be damned.
But it comes back.
Well, we've also had the 2008 app updates, including Kden Live, which we talked about a few shows ago.
Yeah, and there's a great update that we should link to a webpage there with all the stuff and the features. And I think it looks really professional the way they're doing it. Like, you can see that they're trying to shift in the right direction. And as far as I've read from the some of the posts that they've made, their next big thing is to try and work on the MLT backend. But there's a lot of work involved in that, so that's not something they're going to do lightly, because that's the bit that does all the video encoding and syncing and all that sort of stuff. But I think they've made a massive effort on the UI design on this, and it looks really good. Obviously, I'm judging this from a complete layperson's perspective, but to me, it looks like they've separated into various different, like the color space, the audio side of things, and then the video clips, etc.
And there's a Plasma mobile update then?
Yeah, as I say, there hasn't been a much of an update in the last few months from Plasma Mobile, which, if I had a Pine phone, I'd try out, but I don't. Oh well.
I'll send it one day.
Subtle dig. But they have an update on some of the apps that are coming out, and as of now, 5.20 is released. These are going to be coming out very soon. So you've got things like clock application, the weather. There's a calculator app, and the browser has had loads of improvements to it, and there's a sort of a contrast checker and things like that, and some awful looking game, which people play games on phones. I don't know what's wrong with you. But yeah, it's good to see, because the more apps, the more varied the types of applications coming out. It builds a good ecosystem, and we might one day have a phone that we can reliably get an open source fully Linux desktop on there. Obviously, UbiPorts does a really good job as well. But I think it's nice to have a bit of competition in that respect. And they're starting to look really nice. I wish I could try it.
Well, I've just looked and my local post office is only open in the middle of the night, 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. That's
perfect.
How am I possibly going to get there if it closes at 2 o'clock? I don't even wake up till then.
Come winter, all the nice cool morning air. I mean, that'll keep COVID right down. You'll be able to get in there and be safe.
Yeah, it's a great idea. All right, quick mention for a Linux Spotlight episode with Nate Graham of KDE, who we quite often link to. That's a show with Rocco that I was on before. I haven't actually watched or listened to this yet.
Yeah, I've watched half an hour of that epic 2-hour extravaganza. I didn't manage to get any further yet. I will, but I was in a field camping for a few days, so I was trying to conserve battery.
Yeah, well, we'll link to that anyway.
Yeah, it's very good.
Right, well, we better get out of here then. We'll be back in 2 weeks, and do check out Late Night Linux Extra in the meantime. But until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Phelim.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.